Sue said, this is the recording for the alumni information for the Winter 2025-2026 Jumbos for Jumbos program. We're essentially going to run through what the program is, and talk about some frequently asked questions, how to post projects, that sort of stuff. So yeah, and then to get going. All right, so now I know you can see the next slide, but basically the agenda for the presentation is to talk about what is the Jumbos for Jumbos program, like I mentioned, what makes a strong project, what student compensation can look like, working with international students, as there can be some specific differences with that, as well as the role of the supervisor slash alum manager throughout the program, and then also just how to generally post and monitor the project through the herd, which is obviously Tufts student alumni mentorship website, which the Jumbos for Jumbos program is facilitated through. And then, like I said earlier, we'll talk through some frequently asked questions as well. So to talk about what is the Jumbos for Jumbos program. So essentially, it is for Tufts alumni from the School of Arts and Sciences, the School of Engineering, and the School of the Museum of Fine Arts who want to give back and assist Tufts students in the way we had mentioned through these short-term projects. And essentially, students from the School of Arts and Sciences, the School of Engineering, and the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, so the same ones, are those who can participate in the projects with those alums slash managers. The projects are specifically designed for current Tufts students. So that means current freshmen through seniors. So current Tufts undergrads. That does not include any December senior graduates or graduate students as well. So that's the general population who this program is designed to serve. So to talk through what the Jumbos for Jumbos program is, it is essentially short-term project work. And while we do run programs both in the winter and summer, the summer break obviously being significantly longer than the winter break, this is short project-based work that is meant to be virtual for students. So this can be completed wherever they happen to be during the Tufts winter break, whether that be at home or anywhere else. In terms of compensation, the recommended amount is $15 per hour minimum. We see a lot of projects average about like $20 an hour, but we'll note that at least in the state of Massachusetts, obviously given Tufts location, the minimum wage is $15 an hour. So worth noting that as well. The projects should be specific skills-based projects, so something that students can concretely take away from it, whether developing a current skill that they have, developing a new skill altogether. The purpose of the program, why it was started and why we continue with it here at Tufts, is to have students be able to add skills to their own personal portfolio, but also their resumes, as then they would be further going on to apply for internships and jobs as they continue on their Tufts journey. So we give examples of what those skill sets could look like, but obviously there is a much more vast array of skill sets that could be developed from a project like this. So then to talk about when, I know I mentioned the program is pretty short, obviously, given the duration of winter break for 2025-2026 academic year. This year, that spans from the first day of the Tufts winter break, which is Monday, December 22nd, to the first day of classes for the spring 2026 semester, which is January 14th. Like I said, the program also runs during the summer months, so the summer break for Tufts students, and that is significantly longer, from early June to late August. So what the Jumbos for Jumbos program is, it's designed for virtual projects that students can engage in, since they obviously could be in a variety of different locations during that winter break. Projects are facilitated, so posted and monitored through the herd, which is, like I said, is Tufts online mentorship community that is open to both Tufts students alumni and the wider Tufts community. The process for applying for the Jumbos for Jumbos program and getting engaged in it from a student perspective and also from a manager slash alum perspective is the exact same as it would be for any other job. So students are submitting resumes, they are submitting cover letters if the alum would like them to do so, engaging in an interview, anything that you would normally do with an internship or full-time job opportunity. And the point of that is not only for the alum to, of course, understand what sort of candidate they would be hiring and who they ultimately want to have doing this project for them, but also for the student experience of getting interview practice in an official setting, and going through the process of applying to something very similar to an internship or job opportunity, which they may have already done, or if not, definitely will be doing in the future. So yeah, the hiring process and who is selected is entirely up to the alum, so the manager of the project, like I said. And the only other thing worth noting is that while this project is facilitated through the herd, it is really helpful to have alums let the Tufts Career Center team and the employer relations team specifically know who that they are hiring through the herd. So marking students who have applied through the website, whether they have ultimately been hired or not in the herd. And if for some reason that doesn't work, I've put my email right here, sean.gorman@tufts.edu. So first and last name. And if for some reason you can't figure out how to mark a student as hired or not hired in the herd, feel free to just let me know and I can do it. But yeah. And then in terms of the why for the Jumbos for Jumbos program. So this program was actually started during the COVID pandemic, the height of the COVID pandemic in 2020. And it was to provide meaningful work to tough students when there was a big gap in employment opportunities for them, both full-time and internship, obviously, as the entire United States economy hit a massive downturn due to COVID. But we have continued with the program since then because we found that it's really valuable for tough students to be able to gain specific skill sets in short-term project work when even still internships and postgraduate job opportunities can be tough to come by for any student in a really tough hiring market for current students and new graduates. And the point is to help them both develop hard skills that can be put on a resume, but also soft skills that can be put on a resume and that can translate to any job you may work. And it's also the opportunity to build a further connection with the Tufts alumni community, not only to practice their own networking skills and show the importance of that, but then to build tangible relationships with people who are in professional positions that they would find interesting or desirable in the future of their career. So yeah, a lot of different reasons as to why we have found the program to be valuable for lots of students and alums who have told us that they've really enjoyed it. So in terms of what makes a great project, like I said, I've said before, it's remote, short-term and project-based. It has intentional objectives where students can understand what they are learning and the skills that they are developing so that they know what they are getting better at, what can be put on a resume, what they can talk about in an interview, and ultimately just have an understanding of the types of things that they are getting better at. So it promotes that sort of development, both internally, but also how they can communicate it externally. It also would, for these projects, what makes a great project is helping them get a greater understanding of the industry they may be working in, the specific other types of opportunities that could be available to them as they further feel out what they're interested in their career. It also would be good for them to be able to develop a personal connection with the supervisor and alum that they are working with, because that ultimately helps them understand how to be coachable in a professional workplace, helps students be able to develop a further connection with that alum and the, wider Tufts alumni community. It helps them understand how to meet specific metrics or deliverables that are necessary to succeed in this project and importantly in the future, succeed in an internship and job. And then the other thing I just want to note is the purpose of these projects is not to offload admin work onto tough students. Ultimately, the real goal is for them to develop tangible skills in and develop in their terms in their career and professional development, but not to be really just an admin support. I know that oftentimes with entry level positions and when working with young students or young alums, that comes with the territory, and there's always a little bit of that comes into any job, and it's certainly unavoidable. But the main purpose is not to have like an admin assistant. So do want to make that clear as well. So in terms of pitfalls to avoid, I may have gotten ahead of myself here because the first one is, yeah, we just want to avoid hiring an admin assistant here. We're looking to hire someone, a tough student, to actually have them develop in terms of their professional skill set. Um, for the terms of this specific iteration of Jumbos4Jumbos, so the winter break iteration, another pitfall would be to have it, really extend beyond the Tufts winter break. Obviously, as former Tufts students and as members of the Tufts community, you all know that the students here are incredibly busy with their schoolwork and other commitments once the semester does start back up. So definitely want to make sure that the entire duration of the project, they're able to be fully engaged with it, which is why it's during winter break. We're also looking again for it to be very specifically project based. The positions are not meant to be a full internship opportunity, especially during the winter break iteration when that's really impossible to be fit in during a 2 to 3 week period. We're looking for Tufts students to engage with Tufts alums on specific project support that they need that are gaining them tangible skills, not like a full internship experience. And then the other, two things worth noting, the purpose of the project in part being mentorship comes with what we want to have happen in terms of a manager-student relationship when we request that those are specifically between Tufts alums and Tufts students. So the supervisor for this project shouldn't be someone that a Tufts alum works closely with. It should actively be a Tufts alum engaging with the Tufts student. And then the last thing would just be, try to make any deliverables, expectations, project goals, metrics as clear as possible. I know that that can, be hard to do perfectly at times, but to the best of your ability, make, goals and deadlines very clear to students who are obviously trying to practice really important, skills in their professional development in terms of organization, meeting deliverables and otherwise. But in terms of compensation, I mentioned it really briefly earlier. We have a baseline recommendation of 15 an hour as a minimum. We've seen a lot of projects average around $20 an hour. And I will note again that at least in the state of Massachusetts, where we currently are at Tufts, the minimum wage is $15 an hour, which is where some of that recommendation comes from. But in terms of the pay schedule and payment process, that is something determined by the manager slash alum, and really just be upfront with the student about what that's going to look like, whether that's being paid in a lump sum, weekly installments, biweekly, sort of on like a project milestone, like deadline basis, whatever it is. Please just be upfront with the students about it so that everyone understands where you're at. And then the last thing I'll note in terms of this slide is that students are not eligible to receive school credit for these Jumbos4Jumbos projects. While of course they're eligible to receive pay, yeah, they won't get academic credit for that. And then in terms of working with international students, as you all know, Tufts has an international student population that, of course, some of whom will be interested in these projects as well. And in terms of hiring international students in, any set of circumstances, but in the current political landscape, it's very important to be upfront with international students about the expectations of what comes with working in these projects. And they understand this as well. All international students who are engaging with the Jumbos4Jumbos program and are ultimately hired for it should consult with the Tufts International Center prior to pursuing an opportunity through Jumbos4Jumbos. International students should receive curricular practical training authorization for both paid or unpaid experiences. So whether you're paying $15 an hour or whether they're not making anything, they still should be receiving CPT authorization for this. We've included links to the Tufts International Center and CPT eligibility, so you have a greater understanding of what that can look like as well for international students. And ineligibility for CPT could result in ineligibility to participate in the program. So something we just want to make clear up front for any alum making any hiring decisions for this. And then in terms of the role of the manager slash alum, before the program begins, like we've said, make sure the project is posted in the herd. That's obviously where this program is being facilitated. Monitor student applications and arrange interviews with candidates that you are ultimately interested in speaking with. So when you select the student you'd ultimately like to hire, reach out to let them know, let other candidates who have applied for the role or that you have specifically interviewed that the position has been filled. And then please mark the selected student as hired in the herd, which is a pretty intuitive website. So should be easy to find under the applicant at where you find the applicants in the website to be able to mark someone as hired. And if for some reason that doesn't work, please send an email to me, sean.gorman@tufts.edu by December 31st, just letting me know who you have ultimately hired for the project. And then once the project has begun, like I've said, it's all about setting clear expectations and guidelines to the project. So students have an understanding of what deliverables look like. Determine how you will communicate throughout the winter and how frequently that would be. And it's up to your discretion as to how you would like to do that and what sort of one-to-one touch points you'd like to set with the student. But whatever they may be, please make sure that's communicated clearly to them so you're on the same page. Please do make an effort to connect with them regularly to check in on goals and progress and make sure that they are receiving the mentorship and supervision that they're ultimately looking for in terms of these projects. And of course, like I've said with all this, if there are any specific questions, anything that may be confusing or you need clarity on, please do feel free to reach out to me at my email, which is linked here. And then how to post a project. We'll walk through in these next few slides how to do that on the herd. Like I said, it is a fairly intuitive website I found, but still want to make clear how to use it. So all the projects are monitored on here, and if you have an account on the herd as an alum, you obviously just sign into your account as you would any other time. And if you haven't, it's like signing up for any other website. And as Tufts alums, you all will be eligible to register for and be accepted into the herd. So in terms of the project description basics, the full description of the specific project is able to be listed in the herd, and we recommend that, of course, so that students have an understanding of what you are ultimately hiring for. And in that case, you get applicants who are the best fit since they will then have an understanding for it. Make sure you're listing key skills and that are needed and learning outcomes that will come out of this so students know whether they are a potential good fit for it and also what they will be gaining from it so that, of course, you get the most interested and also the most qualified students. Setting expectations in terms of pay, hours per week, duration of weeks is all important so that they know what they're signing up for. And then you don't get a student who accidentally registers for a project, which they're not ultimately going to be able to meet the timing for or aren't, in line with the pay for. Make sure you're making clear the frequency of supervision and mentorship for any sort of career development goals, but also the goals of the projects. Make sure you've listed qualifications of school year, the majors you may be interested in, all of that, application requirements as well. Students will be submitting resumes for these roles, but if you want a cover letter on top of that, any sort of technical skills proficiency, writing sample, that sort of thing, please make it clear what's ultimately expected of the students so they know what it takes to apply. And then if you're ultimately hoping for someone to extend beyond the duration of the winter break. That I know that we've mentioned that as the timeline, and that's the assumed duration of these projects. And that's the case for the students as well. They're assuming that they are this length. If you are looking for someone to go beyond that, please make that clear so that students understand that extended timeline. And if, of course, they are good with that and that works for them, they're looking to do it, that's great. But we want to make sure that if you are looking for that, you're not accidentally getting a student who doesn't understand that it extends beyond winter break and wouldn't be able to make that work. Um, so in terms of how to post a project, so when you go into the herd, and this is just the general view of a user, you are able to go onto the top bar and you go to the career section, and under projects is where you're going to find it. So this is on the herd like homepage when you're logged in or signed up. You click on career and then you go to the projects tab that will populate once you're hovering over it. And then once you're in there, you're able to post a project. So on the right-hand side, you'll see post a project and you click the post a project button. And then from there, you're able to design it how you'd like per the guidelines that, we've already laid out in terms of application deadlines, application materials, general job description, qualifications. You can add any sort of logo you'd like for the company you're working for, any other details that are necessary. Very similar to posting a job on any sort of job board in an internship or full-time capacity. And then how to check on the applicant pool. So when you're in the herd and you do have a project fully published and active on the website for students to see, you'll be able to see everything that is currently shown here. And this just test project is, it shows it as active in this screenshot, but I've marked it as inactive, obviously because it's not a real project, but designed to show that when you do have a project posted, you're able to then click on the silhouette of a person and it will show all applicants. And that's where you can see all application materials for students, whether they've submitted a resume, cover letter, or anything else. And then you're also able to mark the student that you've ultimately decided to hire. And of course, then you'll, in that applicant pool, you'll be able to see how to contact them, set up interviews with any interested candidates, anything else that you want to do to reach out to your applicant pool. And then how to update a hire. Like I said, when you're in that applicant pool, you're going to be able to mark students as a variety of things. You can mark if you've ultimately decided to not move forward with them. You can mark them as declined, whether before the interview process or after interviews. But then ultimately, the important thing to note here is, of course, you can mark them as hired as well. And like I said, we request that any students that you do hire, you have marked in the herd by December 31st, or at the very least have reached out to me to let us know who you've hired. And then to summarize the program dates. Like I said, it's the first day of Tufts winter break, December 22nd, 2025 through January 14th, 2026, that being the first day of the spring 2026 semester for Tufts students. The deadline for project submissions, this has actually been updated a little bit. We initially had it set to Friday, November 28th. It's now been extended to Monday, December 8th to give alumni more time to submit projects, just given I know obviously everybody has busy holiday seasons coming up with Thanksgiving next week. If of course you're able to get in the project during then, that's great and give students more time to apply. But if not, we have extended the deadline to December 8th, which is not the Monday after Thanksgiving, but the Monday after that. So student applications do open on that Monday after Thanksgiving, which, like I said, if you have the project posted earlier rather than later, then they have more time to apply for it. So we allow students to start applying for projects as they're being posted, starting on that first, and then they'll be able to apply after the Monday, December 8th deadline for alumni as well. And then, like I also had said earlier, deadline to confirm student hires would be New Year's Eve, December 31st. And then in terms of check-ins from our team, we do ultimately want to leave the projects up to your discretion and are pretty hands-off with it because of course it's ultimately it's not about us, it's about you and your relationship with the student and ultimately the skill sets and experiences that they can develop through it, and also, what you can develop through it too. But you will receive a check-in midway through the winter from our team about the how the project's going and making sure that everything's just on track and you've answered you have all your questions answered. But then also a post-program evaluation as well, because of course we want to do everything we can to make sure that your experience working through the herd and working through this program with tough students is as positive as possible, because we greatly appreciate anyone who's submitting projects and taking really valuable time to help our students gain great professional experiences. And the last thing I'll say, I mean, we also love testimonials. If you've worked with, an amazing student, and we have had alums come back to us and tell us all about, some of the amazing students they've hired. We love that because, of course, we want to hear directly from you the value that working with tough students can bring, and also then use it to promote future iterations of the program. So in terms of links and resources, that's all here in this presentation. Well, I'll make sure that it gets sent and this recording ultimately gets sent to the registrants for the session. So you'll have access to all this. But yeah, any just resources you may need. And that's it. So any sort of questions people may have, anything else, happy to stick around and answer. But yeah, that's it for the presentation.